Alright guys, welcome to a little short but sweet watercolor demonstration tutorial where we'll be painting a seascape beach from the west coast of Sweden. We'll be using 3 brushes, a mop brush, a mixed brush, and a thinner brush. I usually like to use these 3. And let's get started. I start with the sky using a lot of water, and I usually like to mix different blues for my skies, and I do not pre-wet my paper because generally speaking I like to be direct when I apply my color. So I use cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, and some cerulean blue, and paint the sky. And I keep it very simple, go directly and paint the sky. And some alizarin crimson here as well to give some interesting things happening here. And I usually go here to the horizon line where I will leave it to dry. And in this video I will make some space or speed it up where it gets some time to dry up. That's not very interesting to watch paint dry. And as you can see in the picture, we have some interesting red umbrellas, sun umbrellas on the beach as well. So I make sure to leave those out because that will be an intricate and that's an important part of the painting as a whole. So once we're done with the sky, and the sky can go down into the ocean, we don't have to separate them because, let's face it, the ocean is pretty much the same color as the sky. I just keep on going here and make sure to watch out for the sun umbrellas, as I said. Leave some space for them, make them completely white, and go down and use a mix of yellow ochre and alizarin crimson, some yellow colors basically for the beach, the sand, giving it some interesting texture as well. And I'm giving it some texture here by mixing up the colors a little, the darker and yellow colors. So if you wanted some texture without wanting to use a dry brush, you can just splatter on some different pigments. So I'm just gonna remove some of the excess water here in the sky. And I have I very rarely use black colors for my paintings. I usually do a mix of yellows, reds, and blues to get some browns. And the darker I want something in a cold or a warmer direction, I simply use more pigment. So I rarely use black as a color overall. It can be useful sometimes, especially when you do like very dark and moody winter scenery. It can be very effectful. So now I spit it up and the paper is dried. I'm going to carefully insert the ocean or the water here. This is just a darker mix of the same blues as I use for the sky, basically. Make sure to keep the horizon line as straight as possible. It's not overly important in my opinion. So this is a cold bathhouse, I guess you call it. A bathhouse that people use all year round actually to swim in the ocean. And I will also paint, once I paint the horizon line and the water, I'm just going to remove some of the excess water, especially around this building part, because it's not going to be very prominent. I don't want the water to show through the building, so to speak, so I can remove some of the excess water there. The main point, or the focal point of the painting, is going to be the umbrellas, the red umbrellas. So once again, I sped it up and let it dry. So now we're back, and I'm going to finish the building. And the building is, it's a sunny day and it's a direct sunlight. So I'm going to use warmer colors. Actually going to use a mix of colors to get a brownish tint. And I'm going to use this thinner brush for this, and it's going to have a slightly warmer tone. And I like to mix colors on paper as well. I think it gives the paintings an interesting depth and tonality. And when I paint these small structures here, I don't have to be super detailed with them. I let some strokes, skip. I don't fill in all the details and try to make it look as realistic as possible. I'm just trying to give it to present the main idea of the structure. So you can see some posts here, and this bridge, and these poles that the building is standing on, giving them not a too similar structure or similar pattern, just to break the whole structure up and make it interesting. We don't want to have it looking too monotone. So I'm just gonna make one larger shape here that everything just floats together nicely. And as you can see, I leave some room, some white spots, and some spaces here for the every here and there. Just give it some more detail and some more interest. I don't have to be extremely particular where things are, as long as I get the large overall shape of the building itself. And I will let the building kind of flow together with the bridge. And I also use some spray brush, or not spray brush, but use some spray to give it some, kind of soften the edges a bit. And I think I'm gonna make this dry up, and we'll start actually reach the finish of this painting very soon. So once the building has dried somewhat, it is not exactly completely dry. It's preferable if it's completely dry, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter that much. Most of the times that it's completely dry, even if a painting, for me, it's still a bit moist and the colors start mixing together, I think it adds something. It adds interest, and it kind of ties together the image as well. And as you can see, the umbrellas really pops out when you use, in this case I used a red color here. It really doesn't matter what type of red you use, as long as if it fits the hue or the tone of the painting itself. So now I'm mixing together some ultramarine blue. I slightly spray the paper to moisten it a bit, where I will paint the slight shadows underneath these umbrellas to kind of ground them so they're not floating, kind of soften the edges of these shadows a bit, even though it's quite a stark light. You can just remove some parts of the hardest or the darkest pigment where you perhaps don't want it to look too much contrast. Also, at the same time, paint in some figures here to give it some interest and give the picture some interesting focal points and not make it look too boring. You know, there are people in the picture as well, so just grabbing kind of the similar pigments, similar hue of the umbrellas and the overall picture, so I don't paint, the heads, for example, in a completely red color. I kind of use the same tones and values as I've used before to give some shape. And you can read these shapes as people very easily, even though it's a very small painting. Now I'm mixing up some ultramarine blue, some yellow ochre, some new gamboge, just a couple of, just to give this sort of a green almost tint, to give it some these grass structure here on the ground, just to make the ground pop a little, give it some depth to the picture as well. So what's important is when you paint paintings, usually the things that are closer to you are usually darker, and this is what gives a picture depth, generally speaking, most of the time. So now I'm giving the sand here some structure, kind of reaching the end here. And I was just finding the balance between not going too dark in the front and making the picture come together. So I'm just looking at it now and seeing, where can I improve? Can I add some more depth to it and add some more darkness to it in the front? Add some more interesting textures here. Splatter on some texture, splatter on some pigment here, just to give it some interest. I think it's starting to coming together now. And just letting it dry for a bit and perhaps see how it looks. So I decided I want to go a little bit darker here in the foreground, just to kind of make your eye be drawn towards the structure and the umbrellas here. Just darken it up a little more using the same pigments that I've used before. Kind of not want to go overboard as well. Trying to keep it quite moist so it doesn't leave too many hard edges and dry brushes in the front, because I don't want my eye really to go to the front. I want to keep the shapes and the tones a bit softer here in the foreground, but still have some texture and structure as well. So once it's dried a little bit, I'm just going to finish up a little using the same colors as before, mixing some cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, some reds, just adding small details to the umbrellas just to make them a bit more three-dimensional, adding some more, just a little pop, just to make them look a little bit more worked through. And now I'm mixing up like a darker brown and just trying to add these small little tiny details in the front. And we're done. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Please follow me for more tutorials. And yeah, good luck. Until next time.